Welcome all to our webinar on working in remote teams and digital collaboration. My name is Daniela Becker and I'm a content manager at the Alumni Portal Deutschland. We have organized this webinar for you, and we have an expert here and a speaker today who is Mr. Fabian Schäfer. He is an agile coach and he is experienced in teaching teams how to digitally collaborate successfully. And this webinar will consist of a presentation and a Q&A. And one second, there is and we will also have some small breakout sessions, so you can have some interaction. As you can see, you're all muted right now because we are quite a large group, and we would like to ensure that everyone can listen to the presentation without any background noise. And you can use the chat if there's anything urgent during the presentation, or if you have any questions, to contact us, and I will monitor the chat and I will pass it on to Mr. Schäfer if there are any current urgent questions. And we will also collect the questions for the Q&A in the chat. And during the breakout sessions, you can talk to each other. You will be unmuted. And please also note that the webinar is recorded because we want to publish it on the Alumni Portal later, so that those who couldn't join today still have access to the webinar. And you will receive a follow-up email with a link to the presentation and also to the recording, so you can access that later. So yeah, I hope the webinar is interesting for you and you will get some new knowledge and insights. And now I pass on to Fabian Schäfer. The floor is yours.
Hello everybody from my side. I hope you can hear me. Please give me a quick feedback in the chat if you can hear me. I already saw that many people are participating from all around the world. Currently I see Lima. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. And I feel that you can hear me, so I will start sharing my screen soon and give you a quick glimpse of who I am. While I'm sharing my screen, I'm not able to see the chat. So if you have any urgent questions, feel free to ask them. Lovely Daniela will help me and interrupt me, maybe if I'm too slow or too fast, or if you can't hear me, or if there are any urgent questions that need to be answered instantly. So welcome again to our webinar on remote work and collaboration. Who am I? I'm Fabian Schäfer. I'm from Düsseldorf. I work for the agency Me & Company, and at Me & Company I work as an agile coach, as a service designer and as a business designer. So as you see, I have different roles at the same time. This is due to the fact that at Me & Company we have a special organization system. We work without any hierarchies, and our organization system is called Holacracy. So if you like to Google something about agile frameworks, Google about Holacracy. I have different roles at the same time, so that I'm more flexible and can switch in between those roles depending on the customer's needs. As an agile coach, I support our clients' teams with new ways of working. So I help them to implement agile frameworks and to improve their overall team performance and collaboration. And also in the case of remote teams, we help remote teams to collaborate better and be more performant. As a service designer, I help teams to innovate and come up with new product ideas. Maybe you have heard of things like design thinking or stuff like this. And as a business designer, I help our clients to innovate new business models and scale those business models up. In my private time, I'm a neuro leadership enthusiast, so I'm really into using modern technology and the research to build environments that suit our human brain, so that we can be more happy and more productive in the environments that we work in, because we have the insights now nowadays that we can shape environments that boost our brain's performance. And a little fun fact, I had the honor to be a speaker at the Digital Normit Summit a few weeks ago, although I'm definitely not one. So I feel honored to be part of this digital community, although I'm quite happy to live in Düsseldorf, and I'm not planning to move and travel the world with my laptop, so I'm staying in Düsseldorf. What is Me & Company? Me & Company was founded in 2012. We were at that time the first customer experience agency in Germany. Right now we are 10 experts and still based in Düsseldorf, and what we basically do can be separated into three major areas. We help our clients with business innovation, so we help them to innovate new products or also rethink their current products. In the sector of team performance, we help our client teams to increase their performance or also boost the team mood. Most of this is done with frameworks from the so-called new work area, so agile frameworks. Maybe you've heard about Scrum and stuff like this. We are teaching our client teams how to use those methods properly and how to improve their performance. Last but not least, we're active in the sector of audience development. Audience development basically is the root of Mean Company. That's where everything started. In the beginning, we were just shaping brand experiences and user experiences and helping our clients to build digital products that hook the customer in and that make the customer love a certain brand or a certain product and come back and be willing to pay also some money for their products. At the moment, we are basically focused on the first two areas, so business innovation, team performance, and most of our projects currently are in those two areas. How do our projects look like? There are different formats depending on context and need. The first one are speeches or webinars like this one, where we give short impulses on topics that make you want to dig a little bit deeper into a certain topic and that spark some inspiration. But we also do trainings from half a day to 2 days, where we train teams in open trainings or also in in-house trainings on certain methods, most of them also agile frameworks, like for example our Scrum training or agile leadership training. We do coachings where we help teams to overcome their current challenges. We also do project leading, where we help our teams as project leads to innovate or to fulfill some change projects. And last but not least, we do consulting projects in case one of our clients doesn't want to invest his own human resources and needs an external team to, for example, build a digital project. Then we can also help them and provide the whole team to build up something new like a digital product. Okay, I think that's enough about us. Let's get right into remote work. While I was preparing this talk, of course, I was Googling some pictures, and what somehow was curious that if you Google home office, or at least in my case, these are the pictures that you find on the first page of Google Pictures. So what you see are people basically in their underwear or surrounded by cats, people surrounded by kids playing in the background, or the gentleman in the bottom left side who looks like he's having quite a good time, but he's definitely barely working, relaxing in front of the laptop. So apparently, at least in Germany, the public opinion seems to be that home office or remote work is more like a trend of working without pants surrounded by pets or kids. And I'm trying to reframe this public opinion about remote work today, because there are definitely some other sides of remote work. And I brought you some cases to show that remote work is definitely not about working without pants surrounded by cats. I brought you an experiment from Stanford University. They conducted it in 2013 together with ctrip.com. Ctrip.com is a Chinese provider of travel services. So maybe you know Trivago from Germany. This is the Chinese pendant to this. And they were somehow, luckily, because they were growing very fast in 2013, but as a company based in Shanghai, they were struggling to find cheap business or spaces to rent. And so they somehow wanted to find a way to keep growing without having to invest way more into new office spaces. And they thought that remote work might be the way to keep on growing and saving some money on rents. And they were even okay when they had this idea to take or put down a little bit with a decline in productivity due to people working less at home because nobody was watching them. So what they did, they basically found 500 volunteers. Most of them were service clerk, and those service clerk had daily tasks like being on the phone all day and answering clients' questions, taking orders from participants, or also entering those orders into the system. And they separated those 500 volunteers into two groups randomly. So group A was those people who were lucky and could work from home for the next 2 years, and group B would be working from the home of still from the office. And this is how you can imagine their working conditions. On the left side, the one that is a little bit brighter right now, you can see their office place. So there are small cubicles, and they are well equipped. And on the bottom left, you see a manager patrolling the aisle and controlling if everybody is doing their tasks properly. And on the other hand, on the right side, you see their improvised home offices. On the top right, you see a woman sitting basically right next to her bed. So this was her apartment, quite small, and she had to stay in there the whole day and keep on working. And on the lower right side, you see a gentleman with a little bit more well-equipped home office. At least he has two screens, but still it seems like he's sitting in the middle of his living room. And those were the conditions where people had to be more productive than at the office, or at least that was what they were trying to do. So they surveyed the whole time the team performance and also the team mood. And what they found out after 2 years was quite astonishing, because the results were far beyond C-Trip's or even Stanford's imagination. They found out that they had a productivity increase in the remote working group, so group A, in the first 2 years of 13%. So those people nearly worked 1 day more per week than usually, if you just do some little math. And so this was so successful that they decided to roll the remote work program out to the whole organization. And after this organization-wide rollout, they were even 24% more productive. Also the notice rate, so people quitting their job because they were exhausted, dropped by 50%. So 50% less notices in the 2 years, and this rate remained about the same for the next years. So people seem to be more loyal and also more satisfied with their job. And they also achieved their goal of saving some money on rents, because they saved nearly $2,000 each year per employee just by the reduced cost due to less rents in Shanghai. And I questioned myself, okay, the picture that we in Europe have about Asian culture is that it's a little bit more hierarchical, and maybe that might be a factor that people are also more disciplined at home. And I tried to come up with a new example from a less hierarchical, maybe a little bit more European culture. And I found this history or the story here about Frank von Massenhofen, the gentleman that you see in the picture giving a speech. He was the president of the Belgian Ministry of Social Affairs. He took over the ministry in 2002, and when he did so, this ministry was one of the most unproductive ministries of Belgium. And when he started, they did some math and they found out that by 2020, they wouldn't have enough workers anymore to perform the task that they had to do in order to keep the government office running. So this was due to the fact that people just hated to work for this ministry. The people that worked there weren't really satisfied. They even were a little bit ashamed to talk in public about their employer and that they were part of this ministry. And of course, they also couldn't find new employees because of all the bad things that the current employees were talking about their employer. And thus, they knew they had to change something. And Frank von Massenhofen basically said, we hired managers who took full control and created an environment of distrust. So he tried to solve all those problems that people weren't working properly and were dissatisfied and demotivated by installing more control mechanisms and trying to put managers in front of all those people that could control that they became more productive. But the end result was still, at the same time, they were the most unpopular employer in the public sector, and especially among young people that they desperately needed to keep on providing their services. And only 18% of the relevant applicants from this public sector education program wanted to work for his office, and he knew he had to change something. So what he basically did was he said, we want to get rid of this office, and he completely exchanged the existing structures for self-directed remote teams. So he invested nearly 10 million euros into a modern IT infrastructure and equipped all the employees with suitable equipment for mobile work. So mobile working basically meant they could work from wherever they want. They could come to the office if they like, but they could also stay home or go to a cafe and work from the cafe. And he went a little bit further and also reduced all those control mechanisms and installed culture of trust. So, for example, the employees could choose freely whether they were working or spending vacation time. There were no fixed vacation times anymore. The only thing that still counted was that they would achieve the results that they had committed to as a team, and the way that they achieved those results didn't matter that much anymore. And so people gained a lot more flexibility. If they wanted to have a longer lunch break or go shopping in the lunch break, that was okay. They didn't have to face any consequences as long as they would provide or achieve the goals that everybody committed to. And another interesting thing that they did was to install something called smart utilization. So basically they only had to work 80% of their time for the scheduled planned task that they had to perform. And 10% of their time was reserved for unpredictable events. So if they would have been completely stressed out, 100% already working, and then something unpredictable occurs, this would have meant that they would have to work longer, work a night shift or whatever, and now they had some time reserved for unpredictable events, and they would be able to work in a comfortable pace. And the remaining 10% was reserved for innovations. So they used 10% of their time to basically also improve their processes, their collaboration with the team, and this had a huge effect on them, because as you see, the results were even more better than at ctrip.com. They were able to increase their productivity after the first 3 years up to 50%. And this was also due to the fact that they were able to work from home, but also because they had this 10% for innovation time where they could just figure out ways to be more productive as a team. And they also saved 9 million euros just in the first year, just due to the smaller office spaces that the ministry could rent now at the outside of Brussels, and people didn't have to commute all the time, so they were also more satisfied, because as you see now, instead of those 18% that initially wanted to work for this ministry, 93% of all relevant applicants want to work for the Belgian Ministry of Social Affairs now. So this was a huge success, and they basically secured that they can still exist in the future. And also you see that the flexibility and also this smart utilization rate lead to a way healthier work-life balance for the employees, because the sick leave rate, so people being ill, is one of the lowest in all over Belgium, sometimes even the lowest sick leave rate for every employee in Belgium. So this was also a huge success for Frank van Massenhoven and the ministry. And before we get started and have a closer look at why those companies were so successful with remote work and how you can implement some things they did for your style of working, but also before we have a look at probably the downsides of remote working, I'd like to give you 5 minutes to share your experiences with remote work. So what we're going to do, we're going to open some breakout sessions in a few minutes. Breakout session basically means you will be separated into smaller groups where you can have small discussions. And that means, first of all, Daniela will give you some speaking rights in a few minutes so that you can talk to each other. Please keep your microphone muted until you are in the breakout session so that we don't get any chaos here. You can unmute your phone once you have those audio and speaking rights in the top left corner of your screen. So once you have the speaking rights, we will separate you into breakout sessions of 4 to 5 people. And when you are in those breakout sessions, I would like you to answer the following 3 to 4 questions that you see on the screen. So maybe if you have a sheet of paper nearby, try to write them down or try to remember them. So when you are in the group of 4 to 5 people, please quickly introduce yourself to the group and then answer the 3 questions. So first of all, have you worked from home before? Maybe before this COVID-19 pandemic, did you work from home before this? And in case you did so, what is your personal experience with remote working? Do you enjoy remote working or do you prefer the office? And do you personally think that people are more productive while working from home? So these are the 3 questions and the quick introduction. And please keep in mind, while you are in this breakout session, you only have 5 minutes time to talk. And you are 4 to 5 people, so everybody should just talk for about 1 minute, because we will not know if you have finished talking after those 5 minutes, and we will just get you back into this main session here. So I hope everybody is ready to start, and you will get the speaking rights soon and be distributed into those separate breakout sessions, and then be able to answer the 3 questions. The first was, have you worked from home before? The second, if so, what are your personal experience with working from home? And the third one, do you think that people are more productive at home? And maybe also why? And have an eye on the time, please. Words, but so far, let's continue the webinar. Maybe give me some feedback if you can hear me again and if you're back to the main session. Just write it into the chat, because so far I think you don't have any more speaking rights. Okay, I get the feeling that you can hear me, so I will continue. I shared with you those 2 examples where remote work was really successful, and I promised to talk a little bit more about why those companies were so successful. And yeah, my opinion, and it might also be some kind of a sad truth, is that we are simply more productive at home because we aren't in the office. There's like one big fact, for example, that I'll show you here, is that we spend on average 66 minutes per day discussing non-work related topics with coworkers at the office. So that's over an hour of working time that we're not really productive at the office, and at home we're just discussing non-work related topics with our coworkers 29 minutes per day. So that's nearly half an hour that we have more working time, if you want, so per day. And if you add that up, that's like 2.5 hours per week and 10 hours of like plain working time that you gain per month when you work from home. And this is a big factor that just boosts your productivity. And you will see later why I think this is also the main factor why most people are more productive at home, just simply because they are working more in plain time. And there are some other significant benefits for employers and also employees if they implement remote working. For example, 99% of employees would like to work remotely at least some of the time for the rest of their career. So maybe not every day, and maybe they don't want to be alone at home all the time, but at least some of the time to gain some flexibility. And 74% of employees would also quit their job if it didn't allow remote working for one that did. And 34% would also take a pay cut of up to 5% in order to work remotely. So as an employer, this will also save you some money, not just because of the lower office rents, but also because employees are probably even willing to take a pay cut to work remotely. Is remote work the answer to everything? Of course not. There are some pretty big downsides of remote working if you look at the statistics. For example, 22% of remote workers really struggle with unplugging after work. So they have difficulties to switch off and to just relax after they're finished working, because they're still most of the time basically in the same place that they used to work a few minutes earlier. And 73.4% also feel exhausted a lot while working remotely. If you work in an office, 66% of office workers feel exhausted a lot. Still a pretty bad number, but not as dramatic as people working remotely. So there seems to be a factor that stresses remote workers way more than people working in the office. And also 19% of remote workers also feel lonely because there are many people and no team around them all the time. What can we learn from this? How can we use those positive effects that I mentioned, and how can we avoid the negative effects of remote work? If we look at remote work, we can look at it from 2 different perspectives. The first one is individual remote work. So how do you organize yourself when you're working from home? And the other aspect is remote collaboration. So how do you organize the collaboration with your team when you are working from home, or when one of your colleagues is working from home? And let's look at individual remote work. And if you start working remotely, or if you have the feeling that you're unhappy working from home, I would suggest that you look at one of those 3 aspects here. The first one is your workplace. So how is your workplace set up? How is the environment designed in that you work at home? The second one is your self-organization. So how disciplined are you while working from home? How productive are you while working from home? And the last one is work-life balance, because many people struggle to unplug after working from home and to relax. Let's start with the workplace. How should a proper home office, a workplace look like? Probably something like this. It's quite important that you have an eye on your health. So the workplace should be set up ergonomically. I'm definitely not an expert on ergonomics, so maybe yeah, activate Google if you want to dig a little bit deeper into ergonomic workplace design. But what I can tell you, for example, is that you should invest some money in a good chair so that your back will be supported and that you will not suffer some back pain because of a cheap chair or because you're working from the floor or your couch or whatever. A good chair supports your lower back. The height is so high that your feet still touch the ground. If you're a smaller person and struggle to touch the ground with your feet, maybe put some books or a footrest under your feet so that they have some contact to the ground or something else. Your knees should be bent in a 90-degree angle while you sit, and also the top of the desk should be at the same height as your forearms, so that your arms are also in a 90-degree angle. What's also quite important is that the top of your desktop, so the top line of the desktop, is at the same level as your eyes. Otherwise, you will bend your neck all the time, and then you will get some back pain. And on a long-lasting time, this might also lead to some harder health issues. Of course, you should strive to have a stable and secure broadband internet connection. It should be stable because your coworkers will thank you if you are in an online meeting and they can understand you properly and you have good connections. This just boosts the communication when you work remotely. And of course, you might be handling some sensitive data from your company, so be sure that the internet connection is also safe. If you have a landline phone at the office and you don't want to install another phone at your home and tell people all the time under which number they can reach you, you might try out some voice over IP solutions so that people are able to call you under your landline office number all the time and still reach you no matter where you are. For example, there are apps for this. At my company, we are using 3CX. It's a free app that allows us to keep our number or our landline number from the office on our mobile phone, so we can move around and our clients can still reach us under the number that they know. When it comes to interior design, it can really boost your mood and also your productivity if the working environment is somewhat bright. So maybe just go for white walls. You can also use white walls as whiteboards and put some sticky notes on them. In general, there should be a calm, relaxed, and bright environment just to keep you and your brain also relaxed. Some plants can help also to boost your mood, and be sure that you have a lot of natural light, and if it's dark outside, also a lot of artificial light at home, because this will just help you to stay more productive throughout the day. And you see that guitar in the background. It's always nice to grab a guitar and play a little song while working, and it's tempting to go on your phone while working, but those things are all distractions, and you should actually try to get rid of those distractions if you want to really focus at home and really get things done. So try to ban distractions from your workspace and rather, yeah, play on the guitar after work. So the next aspect is self-organization. How can I stay productive and focused at the home office? One big perk of working from home is that you can basically schedule your day according to your inner clock or your cardiac rhythm, because you don't have to commute in the morning, you don't have to be at the office at a certain time. You can basically start and stop working when it suits you best. What does that mean? What you see here is basically about my productivity line over the day. So at some times I'm just more productive than at other times. For example, in the morning until around 11 a.m. I'm just way more productive because I'm kind of a morning person. And I usually schedule my tasks in a way that all those really challenging tasks and tasks where I need to be really creative are in the beginning of the day. So where I still have a fresh mind and some energy so that I can work on those more challenging tasks in the morning where I just have more productivity and more energy. And then after lunch, I get a little down. And so I use this time for example, repetitive tasks where I don't need to concentrate that much, things that I can just do like while listening to some music or whatever. And sometimes, I also use this time for family and have a longer lunch break, or go jogging outside, or have a walk, or just relax and then work a little bit longer after a 2-hour lunch break or so. And this also it gives me some energy back. If I go running, for example, and go outside, I come back, I have a fresh mind, and then I can go back to work, and I'm just a little bit more productive afterwards and can start working on more challenging tasks again. And yeah, if you also want to schedule your day according to your cardiac rhythm, then I would suggest that you closely observe the way that you work over at least a week or better a month, and have a look at your productivity. So when do you get things done really easy? When is it hard for you to get things done? What is your mood throughout the day? And also how your energy level develops over the weeks where you observe it. So maybe take some sort of a diary and write it down, draw these diagrams that I just showed you for your personal productivity curve, and then observe it closely for at least a week. Daniela, I think some of the participants are not muted right now. Maybe you can mute them again. I don't know if the other participants can
I'm
also hear them.
trying to actually, it still says that participants don't have microphone rights. I fixed it in a second.
I discovered that if they raise their hand and you permit it, then they are unmuted. So I think you have to look for participants that are individually unmuted, and you need to decline those requests to raise the hands. If you have a question, please don't use that raise your hand button. Just type it in the chat, then we will collect those questions and answer them afterwards. And if you see yourself that you have the right to speak right now, so if there's the green microphone in the top left corner of your screen, maybe mute it again so that people won't be disturbed. Yeah, now it seems to be silent. Thank you very much. Let's continue. Yeah, we're just talking about the cardiac rhythm and how to schedule your tasks according to your own productivity curve throughout the day. A big challenge at the home office is actually focus. We just discussed that we are somehow more productive at home, but basically just because we have more time for working. It's not because we can concentrate better, although many people like to escape the office because the office is noisy and somehow a source of constant distractions, but still somehow it's harder for us to focus while working at home. So 39% of employees that work from home struggle to focus at home, while only 29% of employees struggle to focus at work. So even though we are more productive at home, it's not because we can concentrate a lot more. So there is an issue that we can't focus at home. And I think the underlying problem to this is multitasking. And multitasking is not just a huge problem in the home office. In modern times, I even see some job descriptions where people say, oh, you need some talent for multitasking. And I really get a little bit angry if I read things like this, because I think multitasking is one of the biggest office crimes that we do nowadays, as you will now see. Because if you multitask, that basically means you switch between different tasks, because your brain is just not able to perform them at the same time. You're just switching very fast in your brain at this time. And if you switch tasks, then you need some time to think into them again. And it costs you up to 15 minutes to really get into one task again and to gain a real deep focus again. So every time you switch between different things, or when your phone rings or your kids enter the room, then this just drags some of your focus away, and it will take you some time and you will lose some productivity until you can focus again. And also, if you switch tasks, you usually get things done later. So if you're working for a client or another team, that means that you also create value for them later, because you're just not able to finish tasks quick because you switch between them all the time. So for example, also cute dogs might be a huge distraction at home, or your pets that are in the same room. I'm a big fan of pets, and I think they are great for boosting your mood. If you feel down during the day and need some source of happiness, then of course go play with your pets or with your kids. But if you really want to focus and concentrate for some time, then you should actually close the door and try to keep distractions away from you. Distractions like, for example, cute animals, or also your kids. And there's actually a study, the Sutherland study from 2015, that shows us what happens when we switch the context all the time and multitask. And basically, if you have just one project, so you're working on one job, you can use all your productivity time on this project and use 100% of your time. And if you have two jobs and you try to switch between them, you lose on average 20% of your productivity and also of your time, because you need to rethink into the topic again, and those cognitive costs while switching the task just cost you 20% of your time, and you can only work 40% of your time because 2 projects, each 40% is 80% plus those 20% that you lose. And if you scale this up and you have 5 projects at once or are disturbed currently by your pets or your kids, you lose up to 75% of your productivity and also time. And I mean, try to do the math for yourself, or pretend you are your employer, and basically they waste 75% of your money, or you waste 75% of your money, because you could do way better if you would just focus on one thing and not switch in between tasks all the time. So, might seem counterintuitive at first, but working on less at the same time leads to way faster results, because you get things done and finish one thing before you start the next thing, but also because you don't have those cognitive costs all the time. And you will also increase your throughput, so things that you can finish if you just work on one task after another and try to focus on one thing. And you will also create a higher value and faster value for the people that you're working for. So how to stay focused at the home office? One source of distraction might be your colleagues. Of course, at work, your colleagues are around, they can just come by your place and then they can disturb you, but at home, they don't even know if you're working concentratedly. So at work, if they come by your desk and they see that you're very concentratedly working, they might just pass by and come back later. When you're working at home, they don't know if you're working concentratedly and need some time to focus. So they usually just pick up their phone and call you. And each time your phone rings, you will be disturbed and lose some focus and have to rethink into the task again. So you should block some time for focused work a day. You cannot work focusedly the whole day. Your brain is basically too tired at some point, but you should block like 2 to 3 hours a day where you can really focus and dig into those really challenging tasks and just concentrate on those challenging tasks. And it's really important that your coworkers know when those times are and when you don't want to be disturbed, or also at which times they can just call you. So you need to be very transparent about the way that you want to work. And for example, some chat tools offer the option to add a status to your name. This is, for example, Slack. And in the chat tool, your colleagues will see your status. So you might add, okay, I'm in a meeting, you can call me, I'm sick, I'm on vacation, I don't want to be bothered with work stuff. And you might also add the status, I'm working concentratedly, please don't call me. So this is an option for you to show your colleagues that you don't want to be called. Another option is to have like a team schedule where there are certain times where everybody is working focused and concentratedly. So for example, some of our client teams installed a no meeting Wednesday or stuff like this, or between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. there are no calls and people are working focusedly, so they just decided on team times where they want to work focusedly. If you find that your mobile phone or other private gadgets around you are your personal source of distraction, the easiest option is to just put them outside of the room, but sometimes that is hard. For example, if you need your phone in the room, if you just want to be reachable for your family members or whatever, so you can't put the phone away. There are still some options. Some things, if you really need some help to focus and not be on your phone and on social media all the time, are maybe anti-distraction apps, like the one that you see here. Basically, you tell the app that you want to focus, you set a timer, as you see on the right side, and tell the app, okay, I want to focus 105 minutes, and then the timer starts. And if you end this app before the timer ends to switch to another app, then basically the little tree that you planted when you started the timer will just die. So this is quite cruel. But if you stay disciplined and always manage to not unlock your phone and switch to another app before the timer ends, as you see in the middle, you can plant a little forest. So this is some gamification approach to get you off your phone, and you will also get some statistics over a longer period, how productive you were and how well you managed to remain focused. Another thing is, of course, the good old door. So in best case, you have a little room at home where you're working with a door that you can just close to symbolize that you want to work focusedly and don't want to be distracted. You see Kate Danielson here, she even installed something like a traffic light sign for her kids to show them when they can come in and play with her, or at which times she doesn't want to be disturbed, and I think she says, oh, only come in if somebody's bleeding or the house is on fire. So this is a quite easy but good mechanism to tell your house members, if they are the source of your distractions, when you can be disturbed, when you're not working focusedly, and when you really want to be left alone to focus. Okay, work-life balance. I already told you that working from home can actually become a threat to your psychological health, because 22% of remote workers actually struggle to unplug after work, and 73% feel exhausted a lot. And yeah, to get rid of this exhaustion and to somehow remain a healthy work-life balance at home, it's very important to set clear boundaries while working from home. So that means there should be boundaries for places in your flat and in your home where you work, and places where you relax, so leisure places. You should be clear, okay, this is a space where I'm working, and this is a space where I'm relaxing, and don't switch them, because your body will remember, and then it won't be able to relax in your usual relaxing places if you start working from those places. So clear boundaries for places, but also clear boundaries for your time and for your schedule. You shouldn't be working longer than at the office. And you should have those fixed starting times for your workday, fixed ending times for your workday, but also fixed break times, so that you're not working while having lunch, just basically eating in front of your laptop or whatever. You should really be disciplined and stick to those break times and start and end times, and also try to have a 5 to 10 minutes break each hour, so that you can get up from your chair, move a little bit around, and your back will thank you later. It's quite helpful to implement really rituals if you want to install this kind of discipline into your workday. So in the beginning of the workday, there might be a good ritual to actually get dressed just in the way as you would if you would go to work. So avoid wearing those overly casual clothing that you see in all those home office pictures at Google. Start to wear some formal clothes to symbolize your body and your environment. I'm working right now. This is a professional environment, and I want to be productive. And this is one nice ritual to install this, but still the clothes should be somewhat comfortable, so you don't need to get into your most uncomfortable suit or whatever. But try to dress a little bit more formal. Also create a schedule for your day. You can combine this with your inner biorhythm, your cardiac rhythm, if you want to, but try to stick to the break times. Try to take 1 hour breaks at lunch at least, and try to end your work day after the scheduled work time, so that you don't overwork yourself and cause long-time damage to your mental health. And after a work day, it's easier to unplug and switch if you really switch the context, because your body also feels different if you, for example, go outside. So one really good measure to switch the context is to step outside into nature and symbolize your body. Okay, we're in a different environment. This is a new phase of the day, and we can switch off now and really relax now. Turn off your work phone, your laptop, switch off notifications, as long as you tell your team members that you're not reachable anymore, and then everything should be fine. Or put your sweatpants back on, spend some time with your kids or your family or your friends, whatever. Try to really switch the context from working and help your mind to unwind. Okay, if you look on the internet, most of the tips that we will find, and also the research that we looked on, was about individual remote work. So how more productive are individual persons while working from home? What can individual persons do when they work from home? But what really makes the difference at work and at performance is remote collaboration. So I'd like to focus a little bit more on how to organize teamwork when some part of the team or all team members are working remotely. And I brought this little thought exercise for you. So what you see here is a keyboard, and imagine your team basically is this keyboard, and your job as a team is to write letters jointly, and you are the person who's responsible for pressing the A key. So you are the master of the A key, and you're actually also the fastest A key presser in the world. So nobody can beat you at your speed of pressing the A key. And also the rest of your team, they are all masters of their individual keys. So each team member has one of those keys that he has to press. And then a client comes and wants you to write a love letter. So what happens then? In fact, the letter will only be good if you press the A key at the right time. It doesn't matter how fast you push it, you need to press the A key at the right time. Otherwise, the letter will just be some A's and some letter full of typos. And what you see is that it doesn't matter actually how fast each of the team members is. What really matters is the collaboration, so that everybody presses his key at the right time, and so that the team is so organized that everybody knows when to press his or her key. And this is actually what decides how fast you can create value for the customer, because only if you know when to press the key, and if you don't have to communicate all the time before pressing the key with the others, you can write this letter for your client quickly. So no matter how fast each of your team members is, or how well organized you yourself are at home or also at the office, a well-coordinated team will always perform better. And this is what we're looking for now. We're looking how to coordinate teamwork remotely, or I think there will also be a lot of impulses for like non-remote normal teams. Or with the words of Russell Eckhoff, the performance of a system is not the sum of its parts, but the product of their interactions. Let's have a closer look on how to improve the collaboration and also the performance of a team, and especially of a remote team. And I think there are three major aspects to improving team performance. The first one is culture, because the team culture significantly influences the team performance and also the resilience and the way a team copes with setbacks or challenges. And as Peter Drucker says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So no matter how good your strategy is, if your culture doesn't allow you to work properly, then you will not achieve the strategy, and even the best strategy will fail if you don't have a strong team culture. But still, somehow it's hard for us to grasp what culture actually is. You can say that culture is a set of laws that we somehow unconsciously agreed upon as a team. These are some laws how we want to behave while collaborating with each other and while achieving our goals. But why is it so hard for us to describe culture? This is basically because, just like an iceberg, the biggest part of the culture is below the surface, so we are not really aware of the biggest part of our culture. And there is actually an iceberg model that gives you quite a good idea of how culture works. This is the culture model by Edgar Schein, and it separates culture into two parts, a visible part and an invisible part. And on the visible side, we have behaviors. So the way that we behave as a team is actually an expression of our team culture. So what is behavior? It's basically how we treat each other, it's how we talk to each other, or how we work together on a daily basis. So for example, how do we organize our meetings? Do we just sit around and talk a lot, but don't get anything done? Or are there huge requirement documents at the end of every meeting because we're writing them all the time? Or do we have, for example, no meetings at all? Like at my company, we don't have meetings. We just do workshops where we work on the wall on whiteboards with post-its, because we always want to have a result at the end of every team gathering, because we don't want to waste time. And so we just do workshops where we work together to answer some questions, and the result is usually some sort of prototype, or at least some filled out whiteboard. Behavior is also how we deal with conflicts. So do we openly address conflicts at all? Or do we talk behind people's back about conflicts? Or do we address them openly and try to find a solution together? This is all some sort of behavior that tells us something about the team culture that is beneath. There are also physical evidences that we can actually observe. So on the visible side, those physical evidences might be what are the tangible results of our behavior, what rituals and processes did we install, or how did we shape our work environment. We can always see this. This is why it is visible. And those are things like, for example, how do we dress at work? If we come with comfortable clothes, this tells us that maybe our team culture is a little bit more relaxed. And if we have to come with a suit to work every day, this might also show something about the culture, because we might believe that only if we dress properly, then we will be accepted as professionals or something like this. So this is an expression of the culture beneath. Also, how we design our workspaces. This is, for example, our office in Düsseldorf. You see, we like bright spaces. We like some spaces where you can relax. We have our library there for people who just need some off time and want to read a little bit, and this is all okay. And this is part of our culture, so we designed our workspace accordingly to fit our culture and our needs. Or also how the results of our works look. This is also physical evidence for a culture. For example, are the results of our works like really long documentation sheets, or do we usually produce prototypes like in this picture? This is a very simple sketch prototype for an app. This tells us also a lot about our culture. And of course, our behavior and those physical evidences have an impact on our environment and on our team and on our company. So this is also some sort of visible part of our culture. So how do we change the world through our work? What happens through our behavior, and who do we influence? Who's our target group? All stuff that we can see and that we could write down as a part of our culture. What's really interesting is always what is below the surface. So we can spread this invisible part of our culture again up into two areas. On the one side, we have values. Values are things that we can usually actively address, things that we can talk about. So it's something like what is important to us. I can, for example, tell you it's important for me that people are transparent in our cooperation. These are things that I can talk about if I think a little bit about them. Also, you might not be able to see them directly in my behavior, but I'm able to address those things. Or how do we evaluate our actions? What do we welcome? What do we condemn? What do we like while working together? And what don't we like? What is good behavior? What is bad behavior? We can talk about this, and this basically represents our values that we have for our team collaboration. There's an example for values from Fabi. Fabi is an automotive company from France, and they always had very flat hierarchies. And in the 1990s, they were facing a crisis because the steel prices were increasing. And Fabi always valued teamwork very high. So teamwork was very important for them, and belonging was very important for them. So when they were facing this crisis, it seems like they had to let go of all their contract workers, of those people who had limited contracts. And so the team gathered, and in less than an hour, they came up with a decision that everybody wanted to reduce their work and also their salary, just so that they could keep those contract workers, because they perceived them as part of their team and they didn't want them to leave due to this crisis. So everybody took a setback on their personal life and on their income just to keep the team spirit up and keep those people in the team. And they didn't even know how long this crisis will last. In the end, it lasted 3 months. After 3 months, everything was okay again, and they didn't have to let go one of these employees at all. So this is a very strong example of a very strong value, that they value this team spirit very high. And then below values, there are our belief systems. This is basically how we perceive the world. This is things that we take unconsciously for granted, or this is how we assume our environment is shaped. I think a good example to understand beliefs is always, do you believe that the world is a good place or an evil place? Do you believe that you can just go outside at night and nothing will happen to you, or do you believe that there are some evil people outside that might harm you? And this shapes your behavior, and this is a deep belief that you have inside you. Or also, what do people do if you leave them alone and don't control them at all? Will they still work? Some people deeply believe, yes, people will still work if you leave them alone without any control, and others think, no, if you don't control people, they won't work. So these are beliefs that are way down below, but they shape our behavior. They shape, for example, if we install control mechanisms or not. So they shape the way that we behave as a team. One picture to symbolize this might be those two fish here. They swim in the same bowl of water. One of those fish might be a little bit older, and the water is a symbol for the culture. So one of those fish is part of the culture way longer and doesn't even question the culture around him anymore. So when one fish asks the other one, how's the water today? The other one that is a little bit older might just ask, what the fuck is water? So this is a symbol that people stop questioning why they behave in a certain way and why they perceive the world in a certain way, but it's still influencing their behavior, although they just perceive, okay, I'm floating all the time, although they are in some sort of water that influences their behavior. And if you want to shape team culture, there's one method that I want to tell you. It's called the culture map, and we can not dig very deep into it. So maybe take some time afterwards to look it up. This is one example how it works. You basically start by mapping behaviors that your team shows on a regular basis. So on the right side, for example, you see a team that mapped some behavior, and they wrote, okay, we have a lot of quality control on all levels. They see this, you can see this. This is the visible part of your culture. And they also saw, okay, people tend to avoid risky projects. So if there's a new project, nobody raises his hand and says, okay, I want to take over that project. Most of them just want to take less risky projects. And you also have some physical evidence that they avoid risk because they have a lot of documentation, so that they always can go back and finger point, okay, we decided this, and I know why it went wrong, but it's not my fault. And because of all this documentation, they have increased time to market. The increased time to market is the impact that their actions have on their environment. And then when you mapped all those things down, this might take up to 2 days until you have mapped all your behaviors and evidences and found ways how they belong to each other. Then you can go and question your behavior and ask yourself, okay, why do we avoid risky projects and why do we have quality control on all levels? And maybe you might come up with something like, okay, the value underneath this is that we don't tolerate failures because we just don't like failures. This is the way, or the things that we value. We don't value failures. And when you found this out, you can question again, okay, why don't we tolerate failures? And then you might come to the underlying beliefs, which might in this case be, okay, we strive for perfection because in the world that we live in, a team can only be successful if it's perfect or if all the results are perfect. And so you can come up with this causal chain of how your beliefs shape your values in your team, how those values shape the way that you behave and the impact that your behavior has on the world. And it's important to understand that if you map the culture of your team like this, first of all, take some time. And second of all, this is not the starting point for changing your culture, it's just the starting point to talk about your culture. This tool basically just creates transparency about your culture and gives you a basis to talk about your culture. But you can't change culture directly, that's the problem. By mapping it down and switching those post-its, nothing in your culture will change. You can just try to influence your culture through new behaviors because you cannot change the belief system deep down, so you need to try to find some ways how your team can change its behavior. You can install, for example, some new rituals. So if you have a culture that doesn't allow mistakes, you might install some so-called fuck-up nights where people just openly address problems that they have in their career or so-called fuck-ups. So when a project of them went terribly wrong and just talk about it in public in front of your team. Or you can install retrospectives where your team reflects on its teamwork. And by regularly talking a little bit more openly about those failures, people might come to the realization, okay, we talked about those failures, we had those failures because everybody has failures, and nothing happens. Nobody cut our head off, nobody fired us, we're still here. And some of our colleagues even were able to turn their failures into future successes. And by realizing this, you might also shape your deep down belief system and start to believe that, okay, by talking about failures, we are able to create future successes. So by influencing the behavior, by making people talk about failures, you can change their belief system on a long term, but this will take some time. Something else that you can do are team principles. Those are basically just guardrails that help you to achieve your goals according to your values. So I think most of you have heard about team principles. They are usually formulated as mottos or so-called action maxims. They should be short but concise and tell you as short as possible, but as detailed as necessary how you want to behave as a team. And they should be universal. So different from rules or processes, they don't just apply to certain situations. They should always be in place and always help you how to decide how you want to behave in certain situations, and also in situations where you face new challenges. Then those principles should still be able to help you. And to make this a little bit more graspable, I brought an excerpt of the values and principles from Zapier. Zapier is a completely remote working team, and so they need some special team principles to organize their collaboration. The first one is be friendly and patient. I think this is very important because there might be some latency while having a webinar or a meeting, so it might take some time for some people to respond due to technical issues. So you need a little bit more patience. You need to be a little bit more friendly because it's harder to communicate empathically via camera and desktop. They say be welcoming. We strive to be a company that welcomes and supports people of all backgrounds and identities, and so on. You will receive the presentation later and you can read through those principles of Zapier later. So, how do you formulate principles? I think I'm going to skip this part as the time is running away quite quickly, but I give you a short brief on how you could do it with your team, because there's something called the Speakable design. If you want to formulate principles, it might be hard to come up with good principles from scratch, because it's sometimes hard to formulate those positive things, but it's usually easy for us humans to be a little bit more evil. So how this works is basically, if you want to formulate principles with your team, you start by formulating negative principles. So how could you make your teamwork as complicated and chaotic as possible? And after you did this, you just reverse those principles. So how would these principles look like if we turned them over to create useful ones? This might look like this. So you might come up with a negative principle first. So we only do service as instructed and never try something new. And then you turn it around with your team and say, okay, we are curious and sometimes take risks to find new solutions. And by doing so, you will come up with some quite good principles in a pretty short time. Yeah, let's skip the exercise and continue. Yeah, if you formulate principles, you cannot take the principles from Zapier or from another team and just install them in your team. You basically need to formulate individual principles, and you also need to monitor if people act according to your team principles, because if you find out that you have principles in place but nobody acts like them, there might be two reasons. The first one is people don't actually believe in those principles, and in this case you actually don't need them. And if people believe in those principles but find it hard to work accordingly or act accordingly, then there might be some sort of barrier. For example, if you want to encourage people to try out new things and also risk some failures, but you have a very strict bonus system that basically punish them by taking some money from them if they do a mistake, then people will avoid making mistakes. And although if they believe that mistakes are a good thing, they don't want to risk their personal money, and so they want to try out new things to risk a mistake. So this might be a barrier, for example, and you need to closely observe if there are any barriers in your team and then try to get rid of those barriers. But if I had to choose one principle for remote teams, it would be transparent about every aspect of your work, because people cannot just come by your desk. They might not even know whether you're working at a certain time or whether you're sleeping or whatever. So you need to be very transparent about your individual work. If you want to be disturbed or not, your team needs to know this. You also need to be transparent about your team goals, so what you want to achieve together, because you're not in the same room. You can talk about it in a coffee break. You just need to have this clarity to align your teamwork. So you also need a transparent and clear strategy how you want to achieve your team goals, and everybody should be aware of it. So there's maximum transparency. You should be transparent about the processes and basically everything that you can make transparent, because this will save you a lot of time for discussions if everybody is just on the same point and on the same page of the picture. And there are some tools for remote teams to boost transparency. I don't know who of you might already be working with stand-up meetings. They are quite common, for example, in agile frameworks like Scrum, where people meet every day. And you can implement this also for your team, that you meet at a certain time of the day and talk just 15 minutes, not that much time each day, and share what you're working on right now, what you worked on yesterday, and if you're facing any problems right now, so that everybody just has transparency about the issues that the team is facing right now. And there might be a challenge for global teams, because those teams might be in different time zones, and you don't want people to get up every day in the middle of the night just to give you a quick status update. So there are certain tools that just collect your personal answers to your meetup questions, and then the bot distributes them at a given time to each team member. So it basically asynchronizes those stand-up meetings and still ensures that everybody is on the everybody has transparency about the processes and the issues in the team, even though you're not able to meet in a virtual meeting, because you're in different time zones. And especially for leadership positions, it might be interesting to have transparency about their team mood, because you have heard that some people struggle to unplug, some people are more stressed at the home office, but as a manager you can't see this directly because you don't see the people on a daily basis anymore. And there are tools that let you do quick surveys each day or each week, where you can assess whether your team is in a good mood or not, and then you can install some measures to boost them up again and get them into a better mood, or whatever you're interested in. There are links in the presentation, so if you want to look at those single tools, you can do this later when you get this presentation. What's also very important, that if you work in remote teams and work from home alone, then some people feel not just lonely, but they also feel that they are not really part of the team, because nobody appreciates them on a regular basis for their achievements. So you can also install some mechanisms to regularly appreciate each other, to show each other that you're still part of the team, and that people recognize that you're working for them even though you're not in the same office. And I think this is very important, and not just for remote teams, to appreciate each other on a regular basis. For example, we have each Friday our Kudo Friday, where we just share some compliments if we found that something was really great during the week, and if somebody did something really great or achieved something, then we just have a appreciation round so that everybody feels good at the beginning of the weekend, and that everybody knows they are still part of the team and appreciate it. Okay, the second point is communication. Remote teams have different ways to communicate, and I think one important aspect, especially if you are in different time zones and don't need to communicate at the same time, it's basically chats, and there are dozens of chat tools and they have different functions. What I think is important about chat tools, for example, this is Slack, we use Slack, is that it gives you the possibility to structure your communication so that you're not overwhelmed by all the communication of your team. And for example, Slack gives you the possibility to open up teams so that you can communicate with certain people of one team, because not everybody in your organization is interested in the topics that you're talking about, so not everybody should be bothered with your messages, and there you have your own personal space where you can talk about marketing stuff like this. In this example, you can have dedicated channels for certain topics so that everybody knows where they can find discussions about certain topics, but you can also have a direct chat with your colleagues or with multiple colleagues at the same time if there's not a certain topic for a certain issue. Slack also gives you the option to mention team members, and I think that's very important, because if you want to switch off after work and you get notified all the time, and you are on your phone and maybe even have your chat tool installed on your private phone, then you will be distracted and you won't be able to switch off after work, because you will be reminded by those notifications of your work all the time. So these mentions and reactions give you the possibility to switch off notifications. Just in case somebody mentions you directly, you will get a notification on your phone. And you also know which, if there's somebody who quickly needs an answer from you, or if you can read through all those messages at the end of your workday or whenever. So the notification just gives you the possibility to emphasize some messages. Slack also gives you, and I think many chat tools do this, gives you the possibility to talk with emojis. And it might seem childish at first, but emojis can add a lot of empathy to a discussion. Because people by plain text don't know if you're being sarcastic or really happy. They won't find out, but emojis give you the option back to add some empathy to your conversation. And they also give you the possibility to quickly react to a message, so that people know that you read it and that you appreciate it, or if you like it or not. And you don't have to waste some time writing an answer if you don't need to, because sometimes an emoji is enough. If you want to talk to each other in person or at the same time, of course, you can have virtual meetings. For remote teams, it's especially important that you put a little bit more effort in organizing those meetings, because it's a little bit harder to conduct a virtual meeting, because you cannot use your body language to, for example, make a room quiet or stuff like this. So you need to have a clear agenda, and there are also some tools that allow you to gather some input from your team members beforehand, so that you can create an agenda that really adds some value for everybody. And no matter what, if you want to organize a productive meeting or workshop, you should always be able to answer those 4 questions here in advance, and in the best case also write them in the invitation mail for your team members. So the first one is, what do we want to achieve with this workshop? What is the objective? What should be the work results at the end of the workshop? Which methods are we going to use so that people can prepare accordingly? And which roles do we actually need for a certain meeting or workshop, so that people can evaluate themselves if they want to participate or if they feel like they don't add value? Because if I'm in a meeting and I feel like this is just wasting time, then I could just switch over to another task and be more productive and create more value. And of course, there are various tools for different meetings. They have different focus. You can look them up later. What I think it's important to mention is that we would suggest a video tool that allows you to split up into breakout sessions. So like Adobe Connect, like we did in the beginning, but also like Zoom, you have just way more possibilities and can work on different topics at the same time if you split up the team and make dedicated teams in those breakout sessions. While in a remote workshop or meeting, I think it's important that you have some explicit rules in place to organize the collaboration. And these are our meeting rules. The first one is that there should be a quiet environment so that everybody can pay attention. Best case, everybody should use a headset and should mute themselves when they're not talking, because there's usually some background noise, and this will annoy everybody else if you're not muted while you're not talking. You should use your video actually. Some people don't like this, especially in the morning when they haven't put on their formal clothes. But still it adds a lot of empathy if you can see each other and see each other's face, because it just adds a new level to your communication. You should reduce distractions, so not just close the door, but also close the email program so that you don't get notified all the time. You should remind the latency so that there are some technical issues that somebody might just take some time to answer, so you should be a little bit more patient and let other people speak. We also say we work together, so there's no one just spectating the meeting. If you're just a spectator, you're basically not adding anything to the meeting, and then you can also leave the meeting and take your time and invest it in something more productive. And of course, timekeeping. If you invest the time to make an agenda, then you can also have an eye that you stick to this agenda and stick to your time boxing, so that everybody can also plan their day after your meeting and knows when you will end and start and what you will do in your meeting. Okay, the last aspect is alignment. A solid workflow organization just allows us as a team to coordinate our activities more efficiently. And I'd like to talk a little bit about portfolio, Kanban, and flight levels. And this might get a little bit abstract, but I'm trying to make it as graspable as possible. So first of all, I'd like to remind you of this exercise, this mind exercise that I brought. Imagine you are the master of the A and have to press the A key on the keyboard. So in a team, you need to find a way to know when you should push the right button. So as I said, it doesn't matter how fast you push it, it only matters that you push it at the right time. And what I would suggest for each team, not just remote, but also for normal teams, is a Kanban board. Maybe you have heard about Kanban. It's a process management framework, basically. And those boards are just there to visualize your workflow and the status quo. So you just define your working process as a team, and all those little sticky notes that you see there are different tasks that the team has to perform, and they have to go through each of those steps. First they are to do, then somebody develops them, then somebody tests them, and then they are done. So this is a very basic Kanban board that shows you how those little tasks move through the process, how fast you are done with those tasks. And if you want to improve the team performance, then you basically need to improve their value stream. So by making it visual, you can also visualize the current problems that a team is facing. For example, if there is one task, one sticky note that doesn't move at all, you know, oh, there's something wrong, people take way too long, it might be blocked. Or if you see that there are way too many tasks in one lane, like in this case in the testing lane, then you know that there is some sort of bottleneck and that the people working on testing might need some help. And just by visualizing the problems and then reducing them, you can streamline your process and become way faster as a team. And one thing that might help are so-called work in progress limits, because you basically just limit the amount of tasks that can be in one of these columns at the same time. So for example, there can only be 4 tasks in the to-do line. So somebody needs to take one of them and start developing on it before the team can move on. If you see that there isn't any process, then you know, okay, there's a bottleneck and we need to find a way to resolve this bottleneck. This is how this might look for a non-remote team. Kanban boards are usually individual because every team's process is somewhat individual, so a board with just the columns doing blocked and done might not be enough. But of course, this also works for remote teams because basically every project management tools offers the option to work with those Kanban boards. And those are different tools that you can look up in the end. But this is, for example, our Kanban board that we work with in our academy team. So this is our inbound team, which is a smaller team in the academy that basically works on articles and stuff like this. And this is how we see our workflow. And basically, our workflow is a little bit more complicated. So this is just the zoom in that you can get an idea of the user interface, but this is how the whole process looks like, quite detailed, so that we know, okay, we might have a problem there and they're ready for review, lane because there are three tickets at the time, and we need to find a way to streamline our process and improve our collaboration when it comes to reviewing things that are basically already done. Okay, now in many cases you start using Kanban and you find out, okay, we're still not faster. Why is this? Because usually you have external weighting because you are not just an individual team at an organization. There are many other teams around you and you need to collaborate with those teams too. So what those Kanban boards actually look like is like this. There are tickets, they might be in your Kanban board, but actually you need support from another team and they don't know and they have their own agenda and they are working on their own things and your ticket is just not in their priority. So your process will also be stopped and you won't get anything done if you don't also streamline the process with other teams. And in reality, there's not just two teams, there are many teams and they all have some external dependencies on other teams. So basically, if you really want to streamline not just your team performance, but the overall organization performance, you need some higher flight level that can coordinate the cooperation between different teams. So you see on those flight level 1, it's the product level where operative teams work together and streamline their team performance and their team collaboration. And then on a higher level, there's a coordination level, the flight level 2, which basically has an eye on different teams and can coordinate how those teams interact. And their responsibility is to streamline the overall workflow through all their organization teams. So what they basically do is that one representative from each team comes together and they talk about their projects and about the dependencies that they have on each other. This is how this looks in reality. This is at Zipgate, a company from Düsseldorf. These are all their product owners, so the responsible people from each project. They come together, they talk about their project, and they try to resolve some dependencies between each team and try to streamline the whole process so that maybe some tickets from another team will be prioritized in the team where they are currently blocked and where they need some support. And of course, you can also do this as a remote team, and this will add a lot of transparency, especially for bigger teams. So this is again our Asana board. As you see now, we're no longer on level 1 in our inbound team. We're now on the level 2. So there is a academy board with all the smaller projects from the smaller teams so that we can really create transparency about all the workflow in the team, because sometimes our inbound team that writes articles needs support from our website team to get those articles live, and so they rely on each other, and so there is a new level, the level 2, that helps them to coordinate and streamline the overall process. And yeah, to give you an idea how this works, of course you can click on each of those tickets and you get way more details because yeah, this is how the detail page of a ticket looks like. There are additional informations like the task history, requirements, the responsible people, due date. But what you also see is that this ticket is at the same time in different boards. So it is present in this level 2 academy board so that we have an overview about the whole value stream in the organization or in the academy team. And it's also part of the inbound board, so of the teams board, where the team has a little bit more detailed processes. And by putting them digitally in 2 boards and moving them around, we can always see in both levels how those tickets move on and how the team proceeds. Yeah, and if you want to be really good, then you can add another level, the strategic portfolio level. This is basically responsible for prioritization. So this level 3 basically creates the company strategy and decides on what the other teams are going to work. So they basically prioritize all the projects that they want to do in the future. Then they give them to level 2. Level 2 coordinates all those teams, and then on level 1, people work in production to get those things done. Sounds very complex, definitely is. This is how this looks in reality. So this is the overall strategic portfolio from Rewe Digital in Cologne. And yeah, there's one person responsible because it definitely takes a lot of time to manage those huge boards. But still, you can also do this with a digital project management tool by adding one more level. Okay, we're close to the end. One of the last aspects that I want to talk about are remote workshops, because as a remote team, you can't just come together and work on a whiteboard at the wall or have a quick brainstorming. So you need to find different ways. And luckily, there are a lot of cool tools in place already that allow you to conduct a workshop just like in reality. I worked with all of those 3, and they basically offer the same functions, but I want to show you Mural. This is the online collaboration tool that we use. There should be a video in a few seconds. It has no sound, so I will try to talk you through the video at the same time. So what you see here is basically Mural. So welcome to Mural. Mural is basically a huge whiteboard, if you want so. And this huge gray working space can be adjusted according to your needs. You can expand it. And on the left side, you see every function that you need to conduct the workshop. So what you have there are, for example, sticky notes. You can just drag and drop them to the working space, the white working space that I installed there. You can add text, resize the text. It's quite intuitive. Give the text a new shape, for example, or a new color. You can also add some shapes or connectors. This white workspace that you see there is basically just a square. So I'll add another one here to show you how this works. Again, just drag and drop, and then I resize it and give it a white background. And now it looks like a workspace, and you could give a team basically 2 workspaces, so that probably 2 teams could work at the same time at those 2 workspaces. By clicking on the right mouse button, you can add a title. I think I just named it Workspace 2 in this example, so that everybody knows what's going on in this set workspace. Resize it again. You can also add, for example, icons, drag and drop them to the place. You can add frameworks. There are also Kanban boards inside here if you need something pre-prepared, but you can also build them. You can import pictures into the Mural from your desktop or your for your device, or you can just Google them. Let's try workshop here. Double click on the picture. These are all pictures from the internet, so they will show up for everybody. By double clicking, they will be added, so you can move them around again. It's quite easy. I added one too much, so you can delete them by clicking the right mouse button and then deleting them. So this is really easy. As you see, when I zoom out and in with the mouse, I can drag the whole board around by just clicking at and pulling. But if I zoom out, you see that it's quite hard to read the small post-its. And if you have a long workshop, it will be hard to keep an overview over all the elements in the workshop. And there's a map in the bottom right that allows you to navigate the whole board quite easily and just move around very quickly. But there's another cool function. It's called the outlines. It's basically an agenda. So you can add elements to the agenda, like the new workshop space that we created. Just by clicking on the right button, I can add it to the outline, give it a title. It's the workshop space 2. And now I can click on the agenda on the right side if I'm at a different zoom level, and will be zoomed in automatically to the set area that I want to work on. And the team members can follow me by clicking on the agenda. And this is a way more effective way to keep track of what you're working on in Mural. So it offers all the possibilities that you need to conduct a workshop, and there should be no more excuses not to do any digital workshops. If you want to have a look at it, click on the link in the presentation afterwards. Today there are also options to have 3D workshops, and virtual reality might be a little bit pricey right now, but I think in the future this will be the standard, because it just gives you way more options. You can actually create 3D models, build whole buildings in these kind of virtual environments, and for example enter a shop by just virtually building it and then getting an experience how your shop would look like if you would build it. After the workshop, you should look that you document stuff. So try to find one space where you put all your documentation. For example, we use Confluence. It's the same technology like Wikipedia, and if we have questions, this is where all our knowledge is, and we all know where to go if we have any questions. If you work with external partners, you might have some documents that are too big to share via email, so you might try to get some secure and stable cloud-based service to share data with external partners. And if you want to go really far, you can also try out automation. For example, I'm learning UiPath right now, and it just gives you the possibility to automate all your recurring tasks where there doesn't need to be a decision, and some bot will take this task over and basically free your capacities for some more creative collaboration. This is not just relevant for remote teams, but basically a big part of general digitalization. But yeah, maybe this is a little bit too far for today. So last but not least, you learned all those tools, and I hope I was able to give you some impulses on how to yeah, manage the collaboration in remote teams, but also in non-remote teams. But I would like to give one last thing to you before you all switch out in half an hour after the Q&A, and it's how else to create team spirit in teams that barely see each other. And yeah, the only way that I learned about so far is to meet in person. So no matter how remote you are, take some time a year to actually meet in person, because no tool so far can replace meeting someone face to face and really experiencing the whole person, not just through a screen and a camera. So if possible, meet once a month. This will really create a strong team bonding, but don't meet less than 2 times a year, because then you will lose track and lose the feeling of being part of a team. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much. I will now stop sharing my screen so that we can go over to the Q&A session. Just give me a few seconds.
Okay.
So I should be back now.
Thank you very much, Fabian. Just a reminder for everyone that you can use the chat now to ask your questions. There already was positive feedback about your presentation and the presentation content. Actually, there was a question about how to do such a nice presentation.
Lots of pictures. Yeah, I really would suggest to use a lot of pictures in presentations. Although there were many slides, pictures usually transport way more emotion, and humans can interpret pictures way easier than just plain text. So if you're looking for a good presentation, my advice would be lots of pictures.
So do you have any questions for Fabian about maybe some of the tools he has mentioned, or about how to organize remote teams? As long as there is no question in the chat, I will take the chance and ask the first question and wait for more. I just heard that there, especially in the Scandinavian countries, there is a big culture of trust, and that is why they have such a big share of remote work. I just wanted to ask you, should we learn from Scandinavian countries, or have you any experience with examples of best practices in this region?
Yeah, I think it's not just the Scandinavian countries, but also our neighbors. For example, from the Netherlands, I think they have the highest remote working rate. I think this is just something that is installed deeply down in our German culture, because we like to have the things the way they were usually. And I wouldn't say that we can actually learn a lot from them, because right now this pandemic is doing a very great part in teaching us something, because I think right now 14% more people are forced to work from home, and there were already some research that shows that these people changed their perspective about remote work. So as I said, if you Google in Germany home office, many people in underwear and pets all around, but I think this opinion will change slowly, but I would say just give it some time, try it out. As the research and those 2 examples showed, there are lots of arguments on both sides for managers and for employees to try working from home if you have a proper setup at home. Yeah, but definitely take some investment.
So there is a question from the chat about video conferencing tools, and the question is, which tool offers a high security standard?
For us, our new choice is Zoom, because they just did an update, and they are now working according to our very strict data security guidelines from the European Union. So Zoom might be an option for you, but it also always depends where your servers are allowed to be. For all us, it's again Zoom, because they have a German service or European service now. So you might have to have a look at this individual where the servers are located and do some research, because there's also a variety of digital tools all around the world, and that doesn't mean that our European tools might be the best tools for other parts of the world.
Okay. There is a question about the last part of your presentation where you also advised to meet from time to time. And there is Vijay Sharma who has the same opinion, but he wants to know a bit more about it, like your view on what is the best rhythm maybe on meeting. I think you've talked about this before, but maybe you can say 1 or 2 sentences.
Yeah, I would suggest, if possible, to meet once a month. But if you are a global team, this might be a little bit too expensive to meet that often. So at least twice a year would be my suggestion. And yeah, you can use this time, of course, to have a workshop together. But in my opinion, this whole event should focus on fun and team bonding. So you can work on things that have something to do with your work, but at least in the afternoon and in the evening, you should have some leisure time to just let the people connect, have a beer, for example, or go and grab some food together so that they can really socialize. So yeah, start the day, for example, with a small workshop where you work on the team strategy or stuff like this. Don't make it too exhausting. Have a look on the mood of the people so that they have a good mood throughout the whole day, and then this will create a great experience for your team. And then give them some time in the evening to connect.
Then there is a question about teaching. I don't know if you have any experience also with that, or if you work only with enterprises, but is there any tool you could suggest or recommend to use while teaching small groups?
That depends on what you want to do. If you just want to have a frontal presentation like this, you can basically use every webinar tool on the market. If we do digital workshops, we usually so far use 2 tools in parallel. So we have a webinar or video conferencing tool, mostly Slack because of the breakout sessions. And in parallel, we work on Mural. So we communicate over one video chat tool, but we work together in this digital collaboration tool, Slack. So this is our way to do workshops. And through breakout session, you can also help people if they have technical issues by, usually we have 2 moderators in each workshop so that one person can take care of technical issues or understanding issues while the other person can proceed with the workshop.
Okay.
Yeah, but I haven't found one single tool. Yeah, maybe one interesting example is called remote.co. It's basically a virtual office. So when you enter the tool, you basically see the floor plan of an office, and you see little avatars walking through this office. So there are tables in the office, and you can sit on a table, and there can only be up to 5 people on this table. Then you can talk to just those 5 people on the table. You can leave the table again. Then there is a big presentation hall where you can have presentations. So this basically really gives you the feeling of being on some sort of summit or meetup. So this might be something if you have a big group that needs to do workshops with groups of up to 6 people, because then they can go to these smaller tables individually. They have whiteboards on these tables. And if you want to give a presentation, you can take them all back as the moderator into this presentation modus, where they basically just see you talking and can also ask questions like right now. So this is a little bit advanced, gives you the possibility to combine workshop and presentation parts. So maybe remote.co is another option if you're looking for a bigger workshop.
Okay, very interesting. I haven't heard about this one yet.
Maybe also interesting, I heard that there are many people from Nepal here. I was a teacher for some weeks in Nepal actually, and this is why I didn't become a kids teacher.
But as we're talking about all those different tools, there was another question about the minimum quantity of applications needed for good performance. For example, we need something for meetings, something for project management, something to communicate daily. What is your opinion on this?
Yeah, as minimum as possible. So we're always looking for tools that offer many options. For example, Slack also has a video chat function, and we tested it for a time, and this was quite nice because we had all the communication at least in one place. But so far there is no one single tool. But if it would be possible, I would always suggest to minimize the number of tools that you're using, because this reduces your effort when it comes to documentation and talking. You don't need to switch applications all the time because each time you switch an application, this is a barrier basically to document stuff or to chat with people, and each barrier is bad. So if possible, use just a few tools, but find the ones that suit you best.
And then there is a question about how to learn how to use all those tools. Can you recommend any workshops or webinars, or do usually like the programs offer like a small video on how to use them? Maybe I should have done this because there was a problem with the breakout sessions, which always worked fine before, but today it didn't.
Yeah, I think that happens all the time. At least the good tools usually offer some tutorials where they also show you around in a video on the boards, but my preferred way of learning a tool is trying it out and having some internal workshops first to test the tool, and usually you will find all the relevant functions. So test it with your team for some internal project, and then you can roll it out to the customer once you learned it. But usually the good and the big tools have some Q&A section or FAQ section where they offer videos and teach you how to use tools. And the really good tools should be so intuitive that you know how to use them. So this is a quality standard that we, for example, have in our team, that we basically only use tools that are intuitive to use and that don't create some issues because they're just badly designed.
So I still see questions coming up about your presentation because people liked it a lot. So there's a question about which program or application you use to prepare presentations or edit videos. Yeah.
I just prepared this presentation in PowerPoint. This is how we do it. We have our own PowerPoint outlays and designs, so I don't need to design the presentations from scratch. We have some designers in our team that basically did the initial work, so I just have to fill it out, switch the pictures. We have some frameworks in place that help us to design a good presentation, but at some point you also learn how to design a presentation when you do this, but PowerPoint is enough. If I need some more detailed graphics or whatever, then we have designers in-house, so it's easy for us to just ask them to design something for us, and then they usually also use the Adobe Creative Cloud to design things. But I think you can design most of the diagrams and stuff like this with PowerPoint. And the one video you saw, I basically just used the internal screen recorder from Microsoft. So maybe there are some gamers among us. When you start a game, there's usually this pop-up note that tells you, do you want to record your screen? And you can actually use this function to record professional stuff. So if you just add, if you have Windows 10 or upwards, just Google for Game Bar. There should be the Xbox Game Bar pre-installed. And this is a pretty simple tool to just record your screen. And then you can create videos quite simple.
Okay. Then there is another question about the benefits of remote work, and the question is, do you think overall is it more are there more benefits for the companies or for the employees, or is there a balance in this regard?
I think everybody benefits from remote work if you do it right, but if possible, I would always suggest to, for example, work 2 or 3 days per week from home and then meet in person again. Because as I said, just digital collaboration cannot completely replace this in-person experience with your team members. So it has a lot of benefits for both parties, but as you saw, the negative aspects are higher on the employee side because of those burnout dangers. And the possibility that you're not able to mentally switch off after work and that you feel lonely. But on the employer side, of course, there's an initial investment for the technology. I think in the future it will also be an issue that if people work remotely a lot, the employer will have to cover some of their costs, because most of us are working on our private internet and stuff like this. We don't have the cantina around. We need to use our lunchtime to cook meals and stuff like this. So I think if you have a very social employer, in the future it might actually come to the point where they also have to cover some of your costs. Have an eye on this. But I think the perks are way higher, and yeah, and both parties benefit a lot.
I think there is another very interesting question. I also asked myself that. I mean, now most part of, or the largest part of the employees are working from home, but there might be situations later where it's a mixture, like some people are working from home, others are in the office, and how to organize this information, because this situation, and make sure that everyone gets the same information. Yeah, how to organize such a situation.
Yeah, basically the rule of thumb would be if one person in your team is working remotely, the whole team is a remote team. So you need to install those digital tools so this one person at home won't get lost and will still be up to date with all the team topics. So yeah, if one person starts to work remotely, the whole team needs to find a way to collaborate in a new way because they aren't in the same room anymore. And then you should have a look at the presentation again and look at some of these tools and rituals that you should implement to create transparency, and at least try to install those daily meetups where you just have a quick call each day to update each other about the things that you're doing. So really keep an eye that these people don't get lost, and maybe also work with Kanban boards in some digital tool.
Okay. So yes, thank you all for participating and for being so patient with the small technical problems during the breakout sessions we had planned. And thank you again, Fabian, very much for this interesting presentation. I think there is so much input and so much information that we all have to go through the presentation again and check for the tools and the links. Yeah. You will receive that with a follow-up email. And as I said, we recorded the meeting, so the recording will also be made available on the alumni portal. So you can, check that again too. And for now, I'll say stay healthy and take good care. And maybe meet you again through in another webinar. Bye.
Yeah. Goodbye. Thank you very much from my side too. And please feel free to connect. My LinkedIn and email will be in the presentation at the end. And I'm really eager to find out if you were able to write some negative principles, for example, with your team. Then please send them to me. I'm curious what you would write down as negative principles. So yeah, thank you very much for attending. And thank you very much, Daniela, for giving me the opportunity to be here. And see you all soon.